Welcome everybody to Santa Cruz Works Clinic Lean Startup Workshop. I am your host, Doug Erickson, and with me I also have Adrian. Say hi, Adrian.
Hello.
There he is. We're also supported by our sponsors who make much of this very possible through their generous contributions. Show us yourself, James, and tell us about innovation within and the lean startup and how ZHack participants will be able to use it.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks, everybody, for coming. I know this is really kind of strange. I'm looking out my window right now and I see smoke everywhere. I'm hoping that I don't have to evacuate. And I'm sure you're all thinking the same thing. But let's just take an hour right now and talk about customer discovery and how you can do it in the platform that we've built for new entrepreneurs. So first of all, I just want to get a sense, has anybody here ever done customer discovery before or familiar with the lean startup? You can just, I guess you can raise your hand, and Adrian, you can let me know if anybody says yes. Also, I'd like to know how many people are part of ZHacks.
We've got a few in the chat.
Excellent. So can you unmute Jeremy? I would love to have you tell me about your customer discovery experience. When did you do it? Was it helpful for you? Tell me what you learned from it real quick. Share that with the group.
Sure. In my opinion, at the end of the day, I'm normally in situations where, I want to sell some type of solution, and the customer is only going to purchase a solution if they can see that it solves a problem that they have. And so my goal in customer discovery is to understand the situation that the customer's in, what problems they're having, what are their goals and objectives, and seeing if I can, as they're talking or maybe out following the meeting, I have some way of helping them solve their issues. And then, iterating, I guess, on that together to come up with the right solution.
Oh, excellent. So it was interesting. You started off saying something about selling a solution, but when you do customer discovery, what he pointed out is that you just talk to the customer and you try to understand their problems and you try and work with them. And the idea is that if you understand their problems, then you're going to be more effective at understanding how to solve them. And typically the reason we're entrepreneurs is because we have an idea and we actually already have a solution, or at least we think we have a solution. But the point of customer discovery is for you to get outside of your solution and to actually just understand the customer and whether or not they actually have a problem that you are going to solve. And that's why in the information about this program, it talks about the notion of empathy and the ability to be curious. Because if you're sitting there talking to your customer, like Jeremy just mentioned, it's gonna be very hard to do that if you're actually not curious and you don't care about what their problem is. So that's why it's really important to approach customer discovery from a standpoint of you're trying to understand something, you want to be curious. It's not about telling them about your great idea and pitching it to them and getting them to buy in. It's just the opposite. You actually don't want to tell them about your idea, because as soon as you do, you're going to bias them because they're going to know the answer. And what you're trying to do is see if your answer is something that solves their problem. And there's a book I just want to mention real quick. I'm going to share my screen real quick that I want you to jot down if you're going to do this process. Let me just share my screen real quick. This is a book, and by the way, you can get it online for free. And it's called The Mom Test: How to Talk to Customers and Learn If Your Business is a Good Idea When Everyone is Lying to You. And the idea behind the book is that if you don't pitch and if you don't tell them about your solution and you just ask them open-ended questions, they're going to open up, they're going to start telling you things, and then you can decide whether or not what they're telling you, the problems they have, is something that your solution addresses. If it doesn't, then you don't have product market fit. And if you don't have product market fit, then the question is, how do you get to it? And that's usually by talking to them more and changing your product and getting a better sense of that. So What I'd like to do today is just go through a quick set of do's and don'ts in customer discovery, and then show you how to use our software so that you can actually practice customer discovery to help you validate the business model around your startup idea. How many of the people here on the call today are part of Z-Hacks, by the way? Adrian, is there a way you can tell me that?
If anybody raises their hand or in the chat, I believe we've got a few.
And the reason I ask that is because we're offering to let the Z-Hacks entrepreneurs use the software for free, and we'll teach you how to use it and do customer discovery if you want to for your Z-Hacks projects. I'm just mentioning that up front. So since customer discovery is about empathy and customer discovery is about curiosity, curiosity is about trying to find out something you don't know. So it means that when you go talk to these customers, you can't assume that you understand the problems. You have to assume that there's things that they have that you don't know. And you want to find that out. And so that requires you asking open-ended questions. And it requires that you not bias the conversation with your solution, because as soon as you do, they might just start being polite to you and saying, oh, that sounds really good. And that's one of the worst things that can happen in customer discovery is you're trying to get to the truth and they confirm something, but it's actually not true. If they tell you it's a great idea, but it's really not a great idea because they're just being nice and polite and trying to say, oh, that's a great idea, James, doesn't really help you. Another thing you don't want to do is ask hypothetical questions, because hypothetical questions give hypothetical answers, and they're fundamentally useless when you're trying to find out the real truth between for customers' problems. You want to get them to start talking about their life, right? And even if it's about a work situation in their life, you want to get them to start opening up and telling you, like, how often do you do this? And is it something you really care about? Is it important to you? Do you do it very often? Do you think it's important enough that you would spend money on this, right? Does anybody else in your organization do this? The more you can get insight into the problem they have that you're trying to solve, the better you are to become equipped to solve it. And one thing that can happen in customer discovery, as you talk to more and more customers, you can start to understand your customers in ways that they don't, because you've seen it from many, many different points of view. And this is part of the reason in a lot of customer discovery programs, they actually have you go out and talk to 100 different people and interview them. And that's a tall order and it's a lot of work. But if you go through a process like that, what you'll find is there's so many insights that come out of it. Not only does it help you validate your business model, it'll help you realize problems that didn't exist, and quite often make changes to your product or your service or slight tweaks to the business model itself that can be the difference between being successful and unsuccessful. And the real win of doing customer discovery is that if you do it rigorously, right, through the whole process as you're developing your product, you're going to know it's before you release your product that it's meeting a need, because you've already talked to customers, you've showed it to them, they've already given you that feedback. So it really helps you de-risk your startup idea, which is important because it helps you do it faster. It helps you get market traction from the very first time your product is released. It also makes you more investable, because if you go talk to a venture capitalist and you say, I got a great idea, and he says, all right, pitch me, that's a completely different conversation than said, I have a great idea, I've talked to 100 people about it, this is what I've learned, this is how it's changed, this is where my business model started, this is where it is now, this is what we're going to build because of that. That venture capitalist is going to have a lot more confidence in you, and he's going to believe in the assertions you make about the size of your market or who your initial customers are, etc. So I'm a huge fan of customer discovery. My background is I've lived in Santa Cruz since 1996. I was a software engineer in Silicon Valley. Wrote software my whole life, was never really an entrepreneur until I started this company. I started this company by doing customer discovery. I actually went out and spent 8 months just talking to people, and I wasn't good at it at all. I was actually bad at it. I broke all the rules. I asked all the wrong questions. I got lots of false confirmation. But one of the things I started doing early on is I started recording these conversations because I found out that I really couldn't keep track of everything that was being said. And I thought, well, if I record it, I can go play it back later. That was really effective. Problem was I ended up with a folder full of tons of MP3 files and no way to manage that process. That led to the platform that you're going to see today, because in our platform, you can record your customer discovery conversations. You can throw them into our system. We will transcribe them, punctuated, speaker change, all that information is right there so you can review them, and then you can annotate them, and you can keep track of the insights that you learned through the process, and then you can connect those to your actual hypotheses in your business model itself. So you could follow like a very formal, rigorous scientific process of generating hypotheses, doing an experiment, which is talking to a customer, extracting the insights, applying it to your business model, and then you can see, like you can see on the screen right now, what's green is valid, what red isn't, and you can create new business hypotheses until you find a point where through pivoting that you've actually validated it or not. So what I'd like to do now is just give a quick demo of the platform and show you how it works, and then see if you have any feedback or questions. So before I start, does anybody have any questions? I'll take that to be a no. Okay. So I don't know if you're all familiar with the business model canvas, so I'll explain what that is right now. My screen is on, right? You can see it, you guys?
Yeah, and we do actually have a question now from Sam in the chat.
Okay.
How do you know who your potential customers are?
That's a great question. Let me talk about that when I also talk about the business model canvas. So in the business model canvas, the idea here is that you have a business plan on a page, right? And what they've done is they've broken down a business into these different logical blocks. And each one of these blocks is a different part of a business that has to exist. One is called your customer segments. That is, who is going to use your product, who is going to buy your product. Then there's the value proposition, which is what's the value of the problem you solve, right? Is it valuable? Does anybody care about it? Then you have the problem. What is the actual problem that you are solving with your product or service? Then there's the cost structure. What does it cost to make it? And then revenue streams, or what revenue comes, where does that come from? And then they have all these other details like your unfair advantage and the channels that you would distribute it. These are all secondary things in your business model, key metrics you could use to measure your business by, et cetera. But the question you asked is your customer segments. And a customer segment is someone that would buy it. Customer segments are differentiated. Could have multiple customer segments because they might pay a different price for it. Like in my business model, I have enterprise as a customer segment. I also have academia. I have government. They all pay a different price. They have different needs. So the first thing you need to do is think about whatever your solution is, who's going to use it. And this is all hypothetical, right? These are what I call hunches. You don't really know for sure. One of the super critical distinctions between a startup and a company that's up and running is a startup is searching. It doesn't know. Whereas somebody who's got an up and running company has customers, they know what sells, and they're going to try and repeat that and scale it and make more money. That's one of the coolest things about being in a startup. You're in the state of, I don't know. I'm searching. I'm uncertain. Perfect situation to let your curiosity go wild. So from that context, you really don't know a lot of things. So your hypotheses are a way for you to validate those things you don't know and see whether or not you can get some certainty around them. So the things that distinguish one customer segment from another would be things like how you reach them. Do they need a different version of this product or service you're making? Would you charge a different price, right? There's a really good book on this called Business Model Generator that you can also buy on Amazon that's done by Alex Osterwald. I love this book because it's a picture book and I'm a visual person, and it shows you how different business models works, from Google's business model to Apple's to all sorts of different companies. But you have to ask yourself, if I'm going to build something, to get back to your question about customer segments, if I'm going to build something, who do I think is going to use it? So do you mind if I ask you about your idea so we can maybe even just brainstorm for a second about who your customer segments are?
think we've got Naomi who would like to contribute.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is Naomi, and my customer segments are we are building a platform that would connect venture capitalists with university students and accelerators and startups.
Mm-hmm.
So our customer segments are going to be students, and at the other end, we will have like venture capitalists who would come and see what kind of startups are in the market.
Okay, so you first of all, I want to say something about the word customer discovery. I don't think that's the most accurate word. I think it should be called stakeholder discovery. The industry uses the word customer discovery, but if in Naomi's case, she has different stakeholders. It sounds to me like the university students would actually use this platform, but Naomi, in your business model, would they pay for it?
Yes, they would pay for it.
And would venture capitalists pay for it too?
Yeah, definitely. The universities, we have like two different price models, as you mentioned earlier. The students are going to have like a minimum payment fee, but venture capitalists are going to pay like a membership monthly fee, which is, yeah.
Okay, cool. So in that case, they are two different customer segments. They're different stakeholders, and they actually are customers because they both pay for your service. So that's the thing. In that case, you would be wanting to talk to students at universities that are entrepreneurs that you think would pay for your service. And then you'd actually want to talk to venture capitalists who you think would use your service. And you'd want to find out from both of them if this is something that they care about, what their expectations are, whether this is a problem they already have, or whether they're indifferent about it. You know, you really don't know until you go out and talk to them. Because, I mean, Naomi, at first blush, what you're saying makes sense. It's a great idea. But until you actually talk to customers, you don't know. Have you done any customer discovery, Naomi?
Yeah, we are actually talking to a lot of universities, accelerators, and try to see what their problem is and how our platform is going to solve that problem.
Okay, excellent. Okay, cool. How are you doing that right now? How are you keeping track of what happens and who you talk to and the insights that come from that?
So we use like traditional file. I have like a file, have a list of universities that I'm planning to talk to. The POCs, like person of contact that I need to talk to, and have a couple of questions that I would ask them and try
Okay.
to narrow it down and see what common problems like most of universities have.
Okay, so essentially you're doing it manually.
Correct.
Right. Okay, cool. So this software is a tool that you could use to follow that process and to keep track of all the people you talk to and the insights you learn, and then to link that as evidence to validate those customer segments and the value proposition and whether or not they have the problem that you have. And then, from my perspective, customer discovery is something that should be done continuously. It's not actually something that should be done at the beginning just to get to product market fit. Product market fit changes because, as everyone knows, your first customers are going to be a small number of people, and as you get more customers, your customers become more demanding because you're reaching a larger and larger funnel, a broader group of people, and they have higher expectations. There might be some beachhead customers that say, "Wow, that thing you do is just so cool, and I need it, and I'm on a bleeding edge, and I'll put up with bugs and limited features or whatever." But as you become more successful, you have to get something into more and more people's hands, and they become pickier, and they may not use it as much, but they will still use it. That's just what happens as you grow in market share. And so it becomes very important to keep finding out what's important to them, because the things that made your first customers happy may not be the things that make your customers happy as you start to grow. Does that answer your question about customer segments?
Yes, it does for me.
Okay, cool. Any other questions before I jump into the platform? Okay. So what you're looking at is a business model canvas. We actually support several of them. This is the Lean Canvas. We support the regular Alex Osterwalder business model canvas and Steve Blank's mission model canvas. I like this one for startups because it has this whole section for the problem. Many startups start from an idea. an epiphany. Wow, this is something I think the world needs. But quite often, entrepreneurs can't actually succinctly say what the problem is that they're solving. And it becomes very, very difficult to really build something if you don't understand the problem you're solving, because it's very amorphous and you're moving around and changing and you really don't know. So to be able to state your problem on a hypothetical perspective becomes very, very important. So to use our business model canvas, you just click anywhere when you want to create a new hypothesis and you enter the text and you hit return and it's automatically saved. So it's a very simple thing to do. But the idea here is that these become something that you build up evidence to validate or invalidate over time. And one of the important concepts of a business model is that every single one of these hypotheses should be connected to one or more customer segments. And the way we do that in our platform, as soon as I hover over this, you'll see there's a link icon that allows me to link that hypothesis to a customer segment. So if I click on this, I can say, I want to just link that to customer segment 2. And when I check that box, you'll see that customer segment 2 has a blue outline showing that they're linked together. And so just by hovering over this hypothesis, I can see all the customer segments that it is associated with. And in the inverse is also true. If I hover over the customer segment, I can see all of the hypotheses that are dependent upon it. This allows you to make it really clear in your mind and to your stakeholders and to the rest of your team, for this customer segment to be valid, at least a lot of these other hypotheses should have some sort of supporting evidence, or why isn't that the case? So we also have the ability here, if you want, click on the link icon here. This will just show me that customer segment and everything that's linked to it. So it's basically allowing me to look at a business model and say, I just want to focus on this segment and everything that I need to prove or validate before I can validate that customer segment. And I just want you to understand this is all just demo data. So don't be surprised if I've got a customer segment validated, but the dependent hypotheses aren't. And to get out of this mode, you can just click the X. So our business model canvas is super, super easy to use. It has a whole bunch of other features. I'll quickly show you. We have a history where we show the entire history and the evolution of your business model over time. You can step forward and look at it. You can export it as a PowerPoint. We have a bunch of data that we keep on it that you can turn on and off with these checkboxes right here. But for your purposes, the most important thing you can do is figure out who your customer segments are, figure out what your value proposition is and the problem you solve, and get some validation there. We actually have this feature right here called the skinny canvas, because what it does is it just shows you those 3 sections of your business model canvas. Most entrepreneurs really need to start here and not be distracted or worried about all the secondary boxes, because until you've validated a customer segment against a value proposition, you don't even have the beginnings of product market fit. So this helps you sequence and prioritize the hypotheses that you work on first. Okay, any questions on that before I actually jump into the whole customer discovery module? Okay, so this is really the meat of the platform. You could think of customer discovery as qualitative research. Now, we live in a world where there's massive amounts of quantitative research being done. You know this, you're being tracked all over the internet. They know which websites you like, how much time you hover over something, what you click on, what you like, what you don't like. That's all quantitative measurable data about you. But qualitative data is very different. You can only obtain this kind of data by talking to people, asking them what's important to them. And because of the internet and so much quantitative data, qualitative research has kind of fallen off, but it's starting to have a resurgence. So this is basically a qualitative research tool. And the way it works is on the left, you have a list of all the people that you've ever talked to. These are your interview subjects. If you click on one, you'll see the notes that you took from the interview, as well as the transcript of that conversation. We keep both artifacts from the conversation because by recording it and transcribing it, it allows you to focus when you're doing that call on the conversation, not on taking notes, not trying to capture your thoughts, not being distracted with your attention doing that, but just to completely focus on the conversation. So we actually like you to come up with a set of questions that you want to ask that customer and have those prepared and scripted before you even do the interview. So we have a template system. The way that works is you have a bunch of different templates where you can ask those questions. When you create a new interview right here, you can pick one of those templates, right? You can also add additional metadata, quantitative data that you want to add to this if you want to. And then when you click save, your interview will already be preloaded with the questions that you want to ask that person. And if you want, you can even customize them before you do the interview. So the idea here is that when you're talking to the person, at least you have a simple structure of some open-ended questions that you want to ask them to make sure you're being somewhat consistent and you're asking the right kind of questions. Now, that having been said, when you're doing customer discovery, you want to be flexible. If the person starts talking about something or telling a story, pay attention and ask follow-up questions. Don't get stuck in your linear format of asking your questions. And if you look at these questions here, they're really open-ended questions. Tell me about how you do such and such today. That can yield a lot of different directions where they go. They can talk about, how they do it and who else they have to work with and how often they do it and how important it is. You want to get as much of that information from them as you can. So basically the idea is if you record the customer discovery interview, then when they're talking, you're literally just having to type a little bit, or maybe just, even if you don't even take notes, just keep track of some of those things so that when you go back and review it later, you can jot down your insights. So I'm going to just go back to this other, this demo interview already. So what you have is a rich text editor. You can put pictures and web links and videos, and you can format this to your heart's content. But the real power of the system is the qualitative research features, which I'm about to demonstrate right now. And I want you to understand that these features, it's called coding in the qualitative research world. These features work the same on a transcript as they do from the notes you took. So here I have an example where we said, tell me how you do such and such today. And so the customer says, we use a manual system. It wastes a lot of time. It generates inaccurate results. We wish it was automated. That would allow us to save time, broadcast the result automatically, and we do it more frequently. So this customer just told you about a pain point. And in fact, that probably is a feature of your solution. So the way the qualitative the qualitative functions work is very simple. Just select some text, let go of the mouse. That text is now captured on the right. This user interface you're seeing on the right is what we call the insights engine. This is where you capture and log, and categorize, comment, and link the insights from those customer conversations back to your business model canvas as evidence that supports it or doesn't support it. So here's a case where they actually told us about a feature they wanted. So in that case, I would actually click this button and I would categorize it as a feature. So you can see these categories up here are big general categories of what comes out of customer discovery. Now, by default, everything is just a general insight, but we also have a new feature, which is what this is, a feature request. We have the category for new questions so that when you ask a question, excuse me, in customer discovery that you do not want to lose track of, you categorize as a new question, and now you can have that later for your other interviews. Interview candidate is also very important when you're talking to people. One of the hardest things about doing customer discovery is finding people to talk to. Who will talk to you? And one of the best ways to find somebody is ask somebody you're already talking to if they know anybody else. And so one of the last things you want to do in your customer discovery interview is ask that person if they know anybody else that you should talk to. And if they share that with you, this allows you to keep track of that. Another thing that happens in customer discovery is you come up with new hypotheses. Maybe it's a new customer segment. Maybe it's a new problem that you hadn't thought of before, or a value proposition that resonated with a customer that just came up, in the middle of that conversation. So this is a way to keep track of all of that. And then feedback is a way for your team members and your coaches to give you feedback on your customer discovery. But in this simple case, they've suggested a feature. So I'm going to put a comment here. Let's talk to the dev team. Can't type. Okay. Yeah, the faster I try and type, the slower it gets. And then what you can also do is you can link this insight to any one of the hypotheses, one or more hypotheses on your business model. So let's just say that we want to link this to customer segment 2. I'm using that because we did that before. And right here, I can click whether this supports it or whether it doesn't support it. And then I click the Save button. So what this has done is this has created an annotation, an insight that we have connected to that hypothesis on the business model canvas. So now if I actually go back to the BMC, business model canvas, you'll notice when I hover over customer segment 2, see the thumbs up and the thumbs down right there? Now it says there's 2 pieces of evidence that support this hypothesis. So if I come over here and I click on this, that will show them both to me. And if I want to, this one actually happened to be from a recording of the actual conversation. So here I'll unplug. It works. So I actually recorded that interview. And if I want to, I can just hit this and I can actually hear what the customer said.
Currently, I manage a team of 20 individuals, and we are working on developing the next big products for our company.
So I'll hit pause. And if I want to, I can just click on that link and it'll take me right to that interview. So I'm plugging in my headset. So this allows me to use the business model canvas as a mechanism to contain all of the evidence. And very quickly, I can just look at my business model canvas. And with those thumbs up and thumbs downs, I can see how much evidence there is to support each one of those hypotheses. And when I get enough evidence to validate it, I can literally go, okay, I'm going to validate or invalidate this hypothesis. Additionally, it allows me to navigate into the really important points, the insights that came up through customer discovery. So I'm organizing this, I can share it with others, and now I actually have proof. And without doing a lot of work, I've literally just selected some text, typed a little bit of a comment, linked it back to something. Now I'm building up a body of evidence that supports my business model. What you'll find out is when you go through this process, you actually typically start off by invalidating a lot of hypotheses initially, unless you just really have a brilliant idea and everybody really likes it. Quite often, you will think certain customer segments would really care about this, and you'll find out they don't. But what that does, that allows you to mark that as invalid and then focus on another customer segment. And the benefit of that is you're now literally not wasting time on things that you think are great, but nobody else cares about. It's one of the most important things about this. You know, if you're searching for something, if you've ever looked for anything, which we've all done, you look there, stop looking there. The keys aren't there, right? The customer isn't there, move on to the next thing. Humans have a hard time with that. We'll go back and keep going to the same place, thinking we're right, but we're not. But personally, this happened to me in customer discovery. There were certain certain customer segments that I thought would use my product, or certain features that I thought were important. They weren't. As a matter of fact, we've built this platform as an exercise in customer discovery, in that we don't add features to the platform until a customer asks them from us. And quite often there's features that I thought were really important that everybody would want and nobody had ever asked for it. And then maybe a year later, somebody says, boy, I wish I had that feature. And you're like, okay, now they're asking for it. Again, this allows you to build the right products as your customers need them, right features, not to build them prematurely and have them not be used and have wasted a bunch of time, energy, resources doing that. Okay, so I want to show you how that same function works. I'm going to go back to the same interview in a transcript as well. If I come over here, and let me just show you quickly, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting myself, how this whole transcription comes about to be. So we just created this one here earlier. If I come over here, you'll see that there's no audio, there's no transcript yet. So I have two options. I can either click this button and I can start recording audio. So right now I'm recording audio, and everything I'm saying is going to be sent up to the cloud, transcribed. The transcript and the audio will be downloaded back into the platform and synchronized so that I can navigate the audio with the text. So when I click done, like I just did there, now it's going to analyze the audio to make sure that it's actual audio of humans talking. And then it's going to ask me if I want to upload this and pay for it. We have a charge for transcription in the system. It's 8 cents a minute. So I can just say, yeah, go ahead, transcribe that audio. Now it's going to go off and do that transcription. And then when it's done, it will send me an email letting me know that that transcription is ready. Use very high quality transcription here. So it takes some time. That's why we can allow you to go do something else in the platform and come back to it later. I'm going to show you this transcript really quickly and show you how that works. I'm going to delete this insight. But essentially what you have here is a verbatim transcript with the speaker labels assigned to who's talking. This little icon here allows you to document the speakers. When they come back, it'll just say speaker 1 and speaker 2 because we don't know their names. And then you can just change their names to whatever you want like that. And then hit save, and then the labels will be replaced from speaker 1 to the actual person talking. But the way this works is I'm going to hit play and I'm going to start playing the audio, and you'll see that as the audio is played, the word on screen that's being spoken is going to be highlighted, showing you the synchronization.
All right, so thank you for taking the time to meet with me today. Really appreciate it.
No problem. I'm happy to help.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you do here at Awesome Inc.?
So here you can see we're just like a player piano. We're highlighting the word that's spoken. We have the synchronization between the text and the audio. That makes it really easy to create these insights. So here the customer's saying something important that they needed to find a better way to do something. So we select that. And again, we could do the same thing. It's because, sorry, the other one came through, I think. Give me a second here. Yeah, there it is. So I can show you this. This is exactly how it's going to come back. Now, I just want to point this out. Notice it says speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 1. And even though it was only me talking, the algorithm, the software is trying to figure out who's speaking. So it's trying to get a signature of your voice. So on a really, really short conversation, it could really tease apart a signature from my voice. But if it was a longer conversation, the longer the conversation goes on, the machine learning goes, oh, I know that speaker 1 is speaker 2, et cetera. So at the beginning, on a short one like this, it'll get multiple speakers. And you can just come here and just say, this is all James. Like that. And if I want, I can just come over here and delete that one. So they'll be all the same. So the point is that you will see as a conversation gets longer, the algorithms gets used to the people and their dialect and their voice and their intonation, and it gets better at picking them out. And it also gets better at transcribing them. So anyhow, let me go back to this now. All right, so this same annotation feature works here. I'm going to go back to here, what I was showing you, that I can just select this text right here, and this very same thing, categorize this as a new feature, type in my comment, link this to the same hypothesis so you can see how that works, and click save. And now that insight is actually going to be connected to the business model canvas, just like this one. And there you can see, same thing, right? There it is. I can play it right here.
In all honesty, we needed.
So this makes it really easy for you to go through this process of customer discovery and to do it in a rigorous way. We're asking the same questions and you're keeping track of what was said, and you're actually reviewing what was said and you're applying it to your business model. Because what can often happen, and what happened to me, is you start talking to people, and after 20, 30 conversations, this all can become a blur. And if you actually don't keep track of these things and connect them to your hypotheses, and if you can't go back and review them, it can become very difficult to just understand and keep track of what was said. Quite often what happens is the last thing you heard becomes the most important thing, when in fact it's not. So is there any questions on this before I jump into a few more of the features of the platform?
Hey, James, we got about 15 minutes left, just to give you a heads up.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. So, a couple other features that are really useful in the platform. So this view right here is called the Insights view. And this view allows you to see all of those insights across all the interviews. You'll notice when we were looking at one interview, you could see the insights just for that interview. This allows you to see all the insights that everybody in your team has done from day one on this project. And if you want to, you can play the audio by clicking here. You can see who did the interview, when they did it, exactly what that quote was, what your comment was. You can actually see if it's connected to any part of the business model canvas. And then you can filter through these so that you can just quickly find the things you want. So for example, if I wanted to have a meeting with engineering and I just wanted to talk about all the features that they've been requested from our customers, I can click on this and there they are. So I can just absolutely like go, okay, do we want to do this feature? Do we want to do this feature? How do we want to do it, etc. So now I have actually the basis for the things I'm going to put in Jira, the requests, tickets we're going to do for development. I can actually come directly from customer discovery. You can also, this is also really useful to do things like, I want to see all the interview candidates because I want to schedule some customer discovery calls. So now all those people that you got referred to you, you can follow up with them. This makes it really easy to do that kind of stuff. I can also say, I want to see all of the insights we have for our customer segments, right? Or do we have any insights about our cost structure, right? And no, I don't. So that's something I might want to do some customer discovery on. So this is a really nice way to just slice and dice and filter through what I call the needles in the haystack. You know, a conversation might be 30 minutes and it could be 25 minutes of fluff and 5 minutes of really important insight. And this allows me to keep track of that and not have to worry about the fluff. And by the way, when you're in here, I can just click on this and it'll take me right back to the customer discovery interview. So everything is linked here, makes it really easy to jump around and make sense of those conversations that were said in the past. We have search built into the platform, pretty straightforward. Everything is indexed as you do it. So if you want to search for a word like it's not, whatever. But you can just see, I'll look for the word share. There, I saw that. There it is. And if I want to, I can click that, find it. So this is nice when you know you had a conversation with somebody, you forgot something, but you know we talked about, you know, methane or something, you can just search for that word and find it. We keep really rich, excuse me, analytics on everything that happens at the cohort level and also at the team level. This doesn't really look good because it's bogus data, but for each team, we keep track of everything they do. We keep track on the stats of the team. And we also have a video library, which I'll show you, which is all of the videos that Steve Blank does. And this is really great because these videos will basically explain to you what a business model is, explain what each segment of it is. And then there's a really nice module on customer discovery, how to ask the right questions, how to prepare for it. And using this and watching these videos aren't very long. So for example, if you want to talk about customer empathy, that's 2 minutes and 20 seconds. So we get used in a lot of academic settings where this is taught in a university level for MBA grad students or capstone courses or by the National Science Foundation. They use this for the I-Core program. And so they actually expect the teams to go through and watch these videos. But if you're just doing it for yourself, I highly encourage you to watch these videos because they'll really, really help you you know, get a good foundation on how to do customer discovery and how to fill out your business model canvas. So at this point in time, I just, you know, really want to open it up for questions and get your feedback and see what people think about it and see if anybody has any questions about how they would use it.
So we've got 2 questions in our Q&A. The first is from Naomi. How do you prioritize these features on which ones to build first?
That's a great question. I mean, that's one of the things that as a startup founder, I can tell you is I think about this all the time. So what I, just me speaking from my own experience here, but what I have found is that when somebody requests a feature, what I find when I request a feature is that most users don't actually know what they really want. So they'll say, I want a feature that does this. So I'll keep track of that. But then what I will do is I will do more customer discovery. I will do it right there and then with them and ask them, well, why do you need that feature, right? And I'll get more clarity on it. And then once I understand that, then I'll do more customer discovery. I might even go back to other customers I've talked to and ask them questions about that feature, right? I won't say, do you want this feature? But I'll say, is, do you have any pain points around this, like whatever that feature solves or addresses? And by doing that, I get more and more clarity on that issue. And then you can ask in those customer discovery interviews how important it is. And customers will, they have a pretty good sense of how important something is to them. They may exaggerate, right? People say, oh, I really need this, right? And then you can say to them, okay, well, how much would you pay for that, right? And if they say, well, I wouldn't pay anything for it, but it'd be nice. Then all of a sudden you're going, okay, that's not as important as they thought. But I look for consensus from multiple people asking for it, or if it's a very specific customer and they're very important and this is going to be a game changer, I will do it. I'll give you an example. This feature right here, I'm going to go back to these interviews right here. This feature right here, to add this additional metadata to interviews, that didn't exist a week ago. We had a very important customer, a government thing that said, we're doing customer discovery, and we're doing it very, very detailed, and we need to keep track of additional metadata. How big is this company? How much size? Ethnic, demographic information. They said, if we could have this information, especially right now for this project, that would make a game changer for us. So we just did it. So part of it is, your job as the founder is to, as you're going through customer discovery, to understand how important things are to people. The first thing I did when that customer asked for it, I reached out to 3 other customers that had asked for a similar feature. And I teased them out on that. I asked them, how do you want it to work? And what it would do? And then I actually showed it to them, would this work? And then I got consensus from all of them. Then I had a really good sense when I talked to 4 or 5 people who had already asked for that feature, that it was the right thing. But, as a startup, that's a tricky thing. And part of it is, it's just part of the skill and the sitting in an entrepreneur seat, you kind of have to make some judgment calls. There are a couple features I put in this platform that I put in first because I knew that if I did it, then I could find out, because there's some things some things people won't tell you about, right? The famous, nobody ever asked for a bitmap computer with a mouse. They would, you have to ask a secretary, she'd say, I want a faster typewriter. So sometimes you really have to think deeply about their problem and come up with novel solutions. And sometimes you solve something, but it doesn't work. And then you get more feedback on it and then you tweak it. This is a really good example. This feature right here, where we do this automatically selecting and creating insights, right? We went through several iterations of that before we came up with this. And as soon as we hit upon this, we could see the metrics in our system. It went from the average team maybe creating 10 or 15 insights to now we have teams that create over 1,000 insights. So that's one of the beautiful things about creating software, is that you can actually measure everything you do and see whether it works or not. So I hope that answers your question, because if you want to talk aside, I'd be really curious to see more about your platform, and we can talk about some specifics. What was the other question, Adrian?
Next one is, how long does it take to train someone to be proficient with this software?
That's a great question. So our software gets used by people who have to pick it up and use it and learn it really, really quickly. Because quite often we do programs at the government and academic level that are only 4 weeks long. It doesn't take very long at all. When you use our software, I typically will do a training session with that organization, train the instructors, and also train the team members that are going to use it. You saw what it took. Type in some stuff on a hypothesis, type in some notes, select some text, click a few things, boom, that's all it really takes. If you do that, you've done 95% of what you need to do. And what happens is you spend a lot of time in the platform just typing your thoughts. Everybody knows how to do that if you know how to journal or use a word processor. So in that sense, it's actually a very fast learning curve. We do exit surveys on our customers after they use the software in these academic and government settings, and we get really, really high marks on it. It was very easy to use and was very easy to learn. We have a help system built into the platform right here. Just click help, and we have articles on everything from how to create interviews and how to do customer discovery, how to use the business model canvas, etc. So actually, the learning curve is very, very shallow.
Okay, and circling back to Sam's question about how do you know who your potential customers are, and he was following up, is there a specific process to this?
A process to finding out who your customers are?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so if you think about this, if you're an entrepreneur and you have an idea and you don't know who your customer is, that's a really big issue, right? You need to find that out. So the question I'd ask you is, what's the problem you're solving, right? Because if you can answer that question, then the next question is, who's got that problem, right? And I almost want to talk about a specific here. Do you know what the problem is that you're solving? Can we talk about that in the group, or is that not appropriate? Yeah, I'm not going to,
Sam, would you like to?
Yeah, Sam, do you want to talk about the problem you're solving? Because then we can just think about who would have that problem.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. So I'm a PhD student, so I'm thinking about how to, if it's even feasible for my thesis to be a startup, spin-off or whatever. And so my thesis is on gathering sensor data, analyzing it, and visualizing it, and specifically for medical sensor data.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this helps. Okay, so first of all, it's medical. Okay, so you're going to have to talk to somebody in that field. Sam, if you built this thing that you have envisioned, who would use it?
So in my head, I'm thinking about in the clinic. So if you want it, I'm thinking it very academically, right? Because that's my background.
Sure.
But so I'm thinking about it in terms of if you wanted to develop a new sensor to test for a certain thing, you could integrate it right into my system and save the time of trying to develop a whole system just to collect some new sensor data.
Right. So it sounds like you need to talk to people in clinics that are doing this right now, right?
Yes.
That's your customer segment. That's the stakeholder you want to talk to first. And then the question is, if they like it, who's going to make the decision to buy it? Do they get to make that decision? Or do they need to get permission from somebody else? What's the process that would allow your solution to get purchased? And you want to interview those people too. Here's an example. In my business model, I have entrepreneurs using my software, but they don't make the decision. The National Science Foundation does, Rutgers University, MIT, UCSC. They make the decision to use it. So you need to talk to those people to say, how would you make a decision to buy this? So it gets a bit complicated, but this is part of the beauty of this process. It kind of exposes you that complexity early and allows you to realize if there's actually a there. If you talk to the users and they say, Sam, that's awesome, I would love to have that thing. And then you talk to the person that would make the decision. He says, sorry, I have no budget. I never could. We don't care about that. Then you're like, maybe this is a great idea and a great solution, but nobody cares. Nobody has the money. And that's, sometimes you have to just go, yeah, I'm not going to do this because there's no money there. Now, it could be that if you talk to the right people and you could find somebody that does have the money, and there's a way to do that. But this is the point of the process, is that it actually makes you do that up front instead of solving your problem. And then building something and go, here it is. And everybody says, sorry, can't afford it. Can't pay for it. Don't have a way to do it. So does that answer your question, Sam?
Yeah, actually that's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Let's see. I believe that's most of them. Yeah, I think that's it for our questions.
Okay, excellent. So Doug, I think it's already an hour, so I don't want to run over. Customer discovery or about our software, just reach out to me. Happy to talk to you. Thank you so much for being here.